On the morning of May 16th, 2016, in Wilton, Minnesota, the day began quietly. Lyuba Savenok was at home with her sister Elisa and the children. In the kitchen, there were the usual sounds of morning: soft conversations, footsteps, the clink of dishes. Everything seemed normal. Until a knock came at the door. Standing on the threshold was Yevgeny Savenok. His arrival didn't raise alarm at first, but it did create a moment of tension. He explained that he had come to see the children. For a few minutes, things appeared routine. Short phrases exchanged, a hush hanging in the air. The door shut behind him. After a short time, Elisa stepped outside and called the emergency service. Her voice trembled with worry, but she wasn't able to give many details. When the first responders arrived at the house, they found the front door locked from the inside. After forcing entry, they discovered a woman in distress. She was rushed to the hospital. Despite the medical team's urgent efforts, no one could be saved. On that day, the silence that fell over the Savenok home was never broken again. In the days that followed, investigators began piecing together everything they could about the family's background and the path that brought them to Minnesota. Yevgeny Savenok was born in 1986 in Russia, into a large family with 9 children. His father was raised in strict religious traditions passed down from his grandfather, a man who, during Soviet times, had secretly served as a priest. For his religious activities, the grandfather was arrested and spent several years in detention. Upon his release, the family decided to leave the country. They emigrated to the United States in search of freedom of faith and a more peaceful life. Settling in the small town of Wilton, Minnesota, the Savenok family began anew. The older children enrolled in local schools, and the younger ones quickly adapted to American language and culture. As a teenager, Yevgeny distinguished himself as a disciplined student and athlete. He was involved in wrestling, competed in tournaments, and often won. After high school, he became an assistant coach and sports instructor. He was regarded as a role model, arriving on time, following the rules, actively participating in the church the family attended every Sunday. Lyuba was born in Estonia in 1993. When she was a child, her family also emigrated to the United States. They settled in the same state, just a few miles from Wilton. She grew up in a similar environment, religious, hard-working, with an emphasis on family values. Lyuba was a strong student, calm and conflict-averse. After school, she worked at a local company, helped her parents, and attended the same church the Savenoks did. It was there that they met. They were both part of the same faith community, took part in charitable events and gatherings. Their acquaintance grew into a close relationship, and soon they decided to start a family. The wedding received the church's blessing, and relatives from both sides were present at the ceremony. To everyone around them, the union of Yevgeny and Lyuba seemed warm and stable. He reliable, with a firm character, she modest and gentle. In the early years of their life together, they were seen as a model couple, causing no concerns from their parents or their congregation. But beneath the surface of that apparent calm, an unseen force was growing, one that no one suspected. The strict religious upbringing, the teaching of submission, and the belief in the man's authority in the household became part of the foundation on which their relationship rested. Later, it was precisely those beliefs that shaped how Yevgeny saw himself and others, and how Lyuba tried to live her life alongside a man to whom she had entrusted everything. The reality of Lyuba and Yevgeny Savenok's marriage turned out to be far from the hopeful picture their friends and family had imagined. Within just a few months, it became clear that their relationship was built on control, not partnership. Yevgeny insisted that Lyuba shouldn't work, claiming it was out of concern for her well-being. But in truth, he didn't allow her to leave the house without his permission. Any attempt on her part to make an independent decision sparked irritation. Gradually, her contact with friends faded, and visits from her parents became rare. Lyuba found herself under constant surveillance. Her phone was checked, her social circle was restricted, and any delay or missed call was treated as betrayal. The reasons for his outbursts were almost always the same: jealousy, and the need to dominate. Over time, Yevgeny's behavior escalated to threats and physical aggression. Lyuba hid the first injuries, passing them off as accidents. Her family noticed bruises, but she reassured everyone that everything was fine. Later, she reached out to law enforcement several times, reporting abuse and fear for her safety. Each time, after the police intervened, Yevgeny apologized and promised to change. Under pressure from relatives and church leaders urging her to keep the family together, Lyuba forgave him, holding on to the hope that things would get better. In 2012, they welcomed their son, Matthew, and a year later, their daughter, Vivian. Lyuba believed that becoming a father might soften Yevgeny. For a short while, after Matthew was born, he seemed calmer, helping around the house, spending time with the kids. But gradually, everything went back to how it had been before. Yevgeny began drinking heavily, and once under the influence, he often lost control. The smallest things could set him off. He would yell, break things, make threats, and later act as if nothing had happened. When Lyuba tried to reach out for help, Yevgeny pressured her to drop her complaints. He used the children as leverage, saying that without him, they would lose their family. Over time, fear became part of everyday life. The house that should have been a safe haven turned into a place where no one could predict when the next outburst would come. By 2014, the situation had spiraled out of control. Yevgeny barely hid his dependence on alcohol anymore. He came home late, often angry for no clear reason. Family members reached out to the pastor, hoping for his influence to make a difference, but their efforts went nowhere. To outsiders, the Savenoks still appeared to be a stable, church-going family. But behind closed doors, tension filled every corner of their home. Lyuba tried to keep things looking normal for the sake of the children, yet deep down she knew the life they once had was gone. When the tension finally became impossible to hide, Lyuba made a decision she'd been afraid to make for years. She reached out for help. After one of Yevgeny's outbursts, she called the emergency service. That day he had yelled, thrown objects, and pushed her to the floor, threatening to teach her obedience. Officers documented the incident, and a judge granted a temporary protective order, preventing Yevgeny from approaching his wife. For Lyuba, it was her first real step toward freedom, but it also marked the beginning of new pressure. A few days later, representatives from their church came to see her. One of the deacons and the pastor insisted that a Christian family should handle its problems within the home. They spoke about patience, humility, and a wife's duty to forgive. To them, calling the authorities was a shameful act that reflected poorly on the congregation. Lyuba tried to explain that she feared for her safety and for the children, but the only responses she heard were phrases like "faith heals," and "a true wife saves her husband through love." During this time, Yevgeny called Lyuba every single day, urging her to withdraw her report. At first he promised he would change. Later the tone shifted. He warned her that if she didn't drop the protective order, things would end badly. Soon the threats became more specific. He said he would harm her and her family if she didn't stop disgracing his name. Lyuba's parents begged her not to meet with him, but their church mentors kept insisting that ending a marriage was a sin. Under that pressure, Lyuba went to court and withdrew her statement. Police officers warned her it could be dangerous, but she feared both her husband and the judgment of the congregation. In the eyes of her community, she was expected to preserve her family, no matter the cost. Afterward, Yevgeny moved back home. At first he acted calm and considerate, but it didn't last. Before long, the aggression returned. With every incident, Lyuba's hope for help faded. She tried to speak with the pastor about her fear, but he only told her that marriage is a test, and that God never gives a person a burden they cannot carry. Those words broke the last pieces of her confidence. The system she had counted on, both civic and religious, seemed to stand on her husband's side. Lyuba stopped reaching out for help altogether. She no longer called the police or confided in relatives. Each new conflict felt inevitable. The church that was supposed to offer support had instead reinforced her helplessness. She slowly realized that any step she took without her husband's approval would be seen as rebellion, and the fragile protection she once had was gone. By mid-2014, after yet another violent confrontation, Lyuba gathered her children and left for her parents' house. The decision was difficult, but fear had finally given way to exhaustion. With her family's help, she rented a small home in the suburbs and started over. She got a job at a real estate agency. The work required meeting people, and for the first time in years, she could go through the day without scrutiny or blame. Lyuba took the kids to school, spent time with her sister, and began relearning what it meant to live peacefully. Her family noticed how her smile was coming back. She started making plans for the future and spoke about stability and peace. Yevgeny saw her departure as betrayal. At first he called, sent messages, and showed up at her house. Later he changed tactics, sending gifts through mutual friends, showing up at church, asking the pastor to help restore the family. Soon he launched what looked like a campaign of redemption. He quit drinking, found a job, started attending church services regularly, and told everyone about his supposed spiritual rebirth. Through the children, he maintained contact with Lyuba. During visits, he brought candy, small presents, and spoke softly, telling her he wanted to earn back her trust. Over time, his tone softened, and what once was pressure turned into gentle persuasion. He wrote long letters of apology, promising that everything would be different, that he was a changed man. Church members and the pastor urged Lyuba to forgive. They told her that God didn't approve of broken families, and that Yevgeny's repentance seemed genuine. Even her parents, seeing his outward transformation, hoped that, maybe for the children's sake, she should consider giving him another chance. After months of hesitation, Lyuba agreed to limited contact. They began seeing each other again, but continued living separately. Yevgeny kept his distance, spoke calmly, and didn't interfere with her job. His new behavior looked like proof that he had truly changed, and by the end of that year, Lyuba decided to give him a second chance. After a long separation, Yevgeny re-entered Lyuba's life in early 2015. This time, he seemed different. He no longer raised his voice, had stopped drinking, offered help with the kids and around the house. In public, he presented himself as caring, speaking of faith, forgiveness, and how he'd come to realize the errors of his past. To their family and fellow church members, it all looked like a genuine change. Lyuba, exhausted by years of fear and isolation, began to believe that peace might actually be possible. She allowed him to spend more time around her, and eventually agreed to let him move back into the house. At first, things really did seem calm. Yevgeny picked up part-time work, attended church regularly, and even joined Lyuba during Sunday services. The children were thrilled to have their father back. The atmosphere at home felt stable, for the first time in years. No constant conflict, no threats. Lyuba started to believe they could rebuild as a family. In November 2015, she found out she was pregnant with their third child. For her, it was a sign of a new beginning. She believed this time would be different, that he wouldn't go back to the man he once was. But the calm didn't last. Within just a few months, Yevgeny's behavior started to shift again. It began with minor complaints. He didn't like how Lyuba spent money, who she spoke to, or how much time she devoted to the kids. Then came the accusations and controlling behavior. He limited her communication, forbade her from seeing friends, checked her phone, and accused her of disrespect. Any disagreement turned into a shouting match. As the relationship deteriorated, so did his sobriety. Yevgeny began drinking again. Lyuba tried to avoid conflict, but the pressure kept mounting. In early 2016, one of these episodes escalated into violence. Yevgeny physically assaulted her, despite knowing she was pregnant. She reported the incident to the authorities. Medical staff documented multiple bruises and internal bleeding, which put the baby's life at serious risk. That same day, Lyuba was granted a new protective order, barring Yevgeny from coming near her or the children. He was arrested and held in custody. During questioning, he denied responsibility, saying it was just an argument, and he never meant to hurt anyone. The court released him on a $3,000 bond, under the condition that he would appear at a future hearing. After his release, he stayed temporarily with his brother, Despite concerns from her family, Lyuba didn't stop him from seeing the kids, so long as a relative supervised. She believed a father should have a chance to be present in their lives, even under close watch. Yevgeny took advantage of that, continuing to apply pressure through brief interactions and masking it with a display of compliance. His visits with the children gradually became opportunities to engage with Lyuba again. Her family warned her that even limited contact could be dangerous, but she hoped it would prevent another blow-up. The pregnancy was difficult. After the attack, she needed rest, but constant stress was taking its toll. By spring, her health had stabilized somewhat, though emotionally, she was still on edge. Those close to Lyuba understood that the threat hadn't disappeared. It had only gone quiet. Yevgeny was waiting for a chance to regain control, and the system that released him on bond had, in effect, allowed him to get close to his victim again. The fragile peace didn't last. On the outside, the family appeared normal, but behind closed doors, everything was building toward another tragedy, one no one would stop in time. May 16th, 2016. Morning. Lyuba Savenok's home sat on the outskirts of Wilton. Inside, things seemed peaceful. The kids were playing in the living room while Lyuba and her sister, Elisa, prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Nothing hinted that the day would end in devastation. Around 9 a.m., a car pulled up to the house. It was Yevgeny Savenok. He said he came to spend a little time with the kids. Lyuba agreed to let him in. Elisa immediately sensed something was wrong. Yevgeny's behavior was tense. His speech was slow, his eyes unfocused, his movements awkward. Witnesses would later say he appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. Despite this, Lyuba tried to remain calm. She asked her sister not to intervene and let the kids play with their father in the yard. A few minutes later, Yevgeny came back inside, and a conversation between him and Lyuba quickly escalated into a heated argument. Voices were raised, words became sharp. Elisa, realizing things were getting out of hand, stepped outside and called emergency services. She told the dispatcher her pregnant sister was inside with a man who was acting aggressively. As she waited for police to arrive, she heard shouting from inside the house. Then came the sound of the door locking. Elisa tried to get back in, but it was no use. Yevgeny had sealed the entrance. Moments later, the house went silent. Then he emerged, holding the children by the hand, and calmly walked them to his car. Elisa ran to the neighbors to get help. When officers arrived, the house was still locked. After forcing the door open, they found Lyuba Savenok. She had been the victim of a brutal assault. 12 stab wounds, most of them concentrated in her chest and abdomen. She was in the final month of her pregnancy. An ambulance rushed her to a hospital in Bemidji, where doctors attempted an emergency C-section in a desperate effort to save the baby. The newborn lived for only a few minutes. That day marked the tragic end of a story that had quietly unfolded for years. What had looked like reconciliation turned out to be only a pause before an unimaginable tragedy, one that claimed the lives of both a mother and her unborn child. Shortly after the attack, Yevgeny Savenok was arrested near the scene. He was taken to the Wilton Police Department, then transferred to the Beltrami County Jail. Within hours of his arrest, he confessed. Investigators noted that he was calm, didn't try to deny his actions, and described in detail everything he had done. He admitted that the attack was premeditated, that he had been thinking about it for months, and couldn't accept that Lyuba was really gone for good. When asked about his motive, Yevgeny said he felt betrayed and robbed of his family. At no point during questioning or later did he express genuine remorse. The only words of regret he offered were for the kids. Psychological evaluations concluded that Yevgeny was fully competent at the time of the crime. He understood his actions and was capable of controlling them. He was charged with 2 counts: first-degree murder and the unlawful killing of an unborn child. The evidence included his confession, Elisa's eyewitness testimony, expert evaluations, and autopsy results, confirming that Lyuba died from 12 stab wounds to her chest and abdomen. The trial began in the fall of 2016. The Minnesota state prosecutor sought life in prison without the possibility of parole. Yevgeny's defense attorneys argued emotional distress and attempted to downgrade the charges. The trial dragged on for months, delayed by motions from the defense calling for additional psychological evaluations and mental health assessments of the defendant. By early 2017, both sides entered plea negotiations. In February, prosecutors offered a deal. If Yevgeny Savenok pled guilty to both counts, first-degree murder and the unlawful killing of an unborn child, the life sentence without parole would be replaced with a fixed term of 65 years in state prison. Yevgeny accepted. On February 2nd, 2017, the Beltrami County District Court officially found Yevgeny Savenok guilty on both counts. He was sentenced to 65 years in a high-security Minnesota correctional facility. Under state law, with good behavior and participation in work programs, that sentence could be reduced by nearly half. During the hearing, Savenok stated that he accepted responsibility for his actions, but was not asking for forgiveness. The judge emphasized that the crime had been premeditated, calculated, and carried out with full awareness of the consequences. Still, the court acknowledged his confession and his cooperation with investigators, upholding the term agreed upon in the plea deal. Lyuba's family reacted with outrage. Her brother Alexander called the verdict mercy for a murderer and a disgrace to the system. The family believed that a man who had taken the lives of a pregnant woman and her unborn child did not deserve the possibility of a reduced sentence. In their view, the plea agreement was a legal compromise, not true justice. Prosecutors later explained that the deal prevented a lengthy, emotionally draining trial, protected the mental health of key witnesses, and ensured a guaranteed conviction without the risk of appeal delays. After sentencing, Savenok was transferred to the Oak Park Heights maximum security prison. His attorneys filed an appeal requesting a review of his confinement conditions and a potential reconsideration of sentence reduction, but the court denied it, leaving the judgment intact. For Lyuba's family, the legal chapter had closed, but emotionally, it never would. They had lost a daughter, a sister, and a grandchild. No number of years behind bars could bring them peace. 65 years, even if served to the end, would never restore the life that was taken by violence and misplaced faith in the idea that an abuser could truly change. After the tragedy, Lyuba Savenok, the only eyewitness, became the key witness in the case and the emotional anchor for the family. Her testimony was central to the prosecution's success, but the trauma she endured left deep scars. She underwent long-term treatment for post-traumatic stress, but ultimately took on the role of guardian for her late sister's children. At first, Lyuba's parents were granted legal custody, but their age and health made full-time care difficult. Lyuba petitioned the court to become the children's official guardian. The court granted her request, with the parents' consent, allowing the family to stay together. They lived under one roof, surrounding the children with love and stability, determined that the past would not dictate their future. Later that same year, a vigil was held in Wilton. Friends, family members, neighbors, and members of the local church gathered outside the house where the tragedy had unfolded. Candles were lit, prayers were spoken, and people shared memories of Lyuba and her unborn child. The event became more than a farewell. It was a public reminder of what silence in the face of violence can lead to. Following the conclusion of the investigation, the county police issued a public statement. In it, they warned that withdrawing protective orders and placing trust in the promises of someone with a history of aggression often leads to devastating outcomes. The media gave widespread coverage to the case, calling it a clear example of a systemic issue, where fear, social pressure, and misplaced hope in someone's change can set the stage for repeated violence. The story of the Savenok family became a rallying cry. Advocacy groups used it to bring attention to the dangers of domestic abuse. Lyuba's name appeared in campaigns demanding stronger protections for victims and reforms in how these cases are handled. For Lyuba and the rest of the family, honoring Lyuba's memory became a mission to speak out about the things that had too often been kept quiet. The tragedy may have ended, but its impact remains. It forces us to reflect on society's role in confronting violence. Why do fear and rigid beliefs keep victims silent, and the people around them inactive? In this story, what seemed like faith, patience, and tradition turned into a trap, one where endurance became indistinguishable from surrender. Lyuba will be remembered as someone who simply wanted a normal life. She cared deeply for her children, worked hard, tried to keep her family together, and believed that kindness could change a person. Her kindness didn't save her, but it left behind a painful lesson about the cost of silence and inaction. Now, 2 children grow up without their mother's care, a heartbreaking reminder that indifference can be just as destructive as physical harm. The only way out of the cycle of fear is to speak up, to seek support, and to act before it's too late to be heard.